Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ross Dawson.
Thank you. It's a true delight to be here, and it is now the 36th country in which I have spoken in. So thank you so much for the invitation. It's my first time in Nepal, and delighted to be here. And I have to say, I was not aware of the presentations that came before me, but very impressed with what I've seen, and you'll see that in fact what you've heard so far will be echoed very much in what I have to share today. So this is the point where the future is not something that just happens. We have to create it. This is the venture where it is all together as an industry, as participants, that we can create that. And it is a foundation of not just an industry, but of course the economy, of the society, and of the potential of this wonderful nation. So, if we look at the journey which we've on, I think we need to go back to the very beginning, where we started as humans by inventing. We invented, the first thing which we invented, or one of the very first, was fire. And that was something which enabled us to cook our food, which meant we had greater nutrients, which meant they could grow our brain, which means that we could think more and we could create more possibilities. And throughout history, every invention, everything that we have created has been the foundation for more progress, to be able to grow more, to be able to build on itself. And now, as we are more connected, as we've been able to write books, to be able to publish books, to be able to use the digital technologies to communicate, it means that all of us can learn from everything that we are all doing. And that continues to grow in itself. So we're all familiar with the Moore's law and the exponential growth in technology. But in fact, human knowledge is also exponential. It continues to feed on itself. And this shows the growth in pre-publication journal archive, where we are starting to learn more from each other and be able to grow on itself in many ways. And so right in there, just somewhere around here, was a paper which was called "Attention is All You Need," which was the birth of generative AI. And that was shared openly, and so everyone started to learn from that and to build on that in many new ways. And so now we are reaching this point where this growth in knowledge, this growth in capability is becoming quite extraordinary. 2026 is truly an inflection point in humanity, because we have alongside us technologies that we interact with, that augment who we are, that change the nature of what it is to be human. And if we look at where AI is going, I think it's useful to look at a few benchmarks. We're all familiar with these benchmarks. What is the capability of AI and how can we measure it? And just three which I think are particularly interesting to look at. One is what is called a GPQA, which is Google Proof Question and Answer, which means that you can't look up the answer in Google, you have to know it. And these are questions that you have to be a PhD researcher to understand. And generally, across PhD researchers, they get around 70% right, 60 to 70% right in their own area of expertise, where they're amongst the best people on the planet. And more generally, they might get around 30%. In the last few years, we've seen that, in fact, AI has gone from, similar to a PhD level researcher to far beyond human capabilities. We also have other benchmarks where, because AI was beating every technological benchmark we had, created a new one, which called AGI, ArcAGI. The first one, we basically said it, that was already beaten, so ArcAGI 2 was said, all right, well, this is something where this is only humans are capable of. So 18 months ago, the performance of AI was 0. Today, it is already over 80%. And so we have to invent new ways, try to find new things which humans can do and AI cannot. And at the edges of maths, sort of the most complex thinking that we have, again, moving from 0 performance just 18 months ago to now higher and higher levels. And any of you who are close involved in AI will just know that every single day there are extraordinary developments. Now, this is a human invention. And I think where we need to really understand that the role of AI is to amplify our intention. What do you want to achieve? What is your intention? Because AI is a tool in order to be able to achieve your intention as individuals, as organizations, together as a society. So that's the way we need to be thinking of this. This is a tool. This is something which makes us individually and collectively more. So I've done some research before in order to understand what is going on in Nepal. And well, actually, some of these statistics are things which you've already heard this evening and probably well familiar with. But just to remind myself, just to give a little context of where we are in Nepal today. So mobile transactions increasing 30% per year. The number of mobile banking users increasing 10% per year, over to 29 million. Pretty strong growth in QR payments, as we've already heard and you experience every day. This is now an extraordinary growth of new possibilities for payments. Deposit accounts, not increasing as fast, but still growth there. And I think very importantly, financial inclusion is absolutely critical for a nation like Nepal, where there has been substantial growth. But still, at this point, there's still only 60% of adults have a unique account. Many accounts, but with multiple account holders. So there is more opportunity to be able to bring the nation with you on this journey. So if we think about now the next phase of finance, we have heard this phrase, from adoption to transformation. And I think that's a great way to look at it in terms of where there has been so much already established in terms of financial participation in Nepal. Now is this is the foundation layer on which to enable this transformation. And almost all of these ideas, I think, are ones which you've just heard about from the presentations now. So this idea of moving from digital banking, that's a foundation where you're enabled to transact digitally, using, of course, mobile phones, which are at the heart of everyone's lives, to making that finance intelligence, to bringing in artificial intelligence to make it something which is part of our lives in many more ways. Being able to... Is there another clicker? Because this one's not working very well. Moving from digital self-service, and that's something where you can essentially do banking for yourself, where you get the insights from the finance into your personal financial situation. This context for where you are in your finance. To be able to move on to from a single banking app to something which is assisting you, coaching you in what it is you can do and how you can best do that. Great, thank you. So from self-service access, so financial control, this is ultimately about being able to control your finances. And I think what we saw earlier around being able to see the entire picture, that being presented to you in a way which is relevant to you as an individual is fundamental. Being able to essentially give power to the individuals. This is not just about, all right, we've got some transactions, I can send money here and so on. To be able to give power to the individual, to control their finances, to be able to create, as we've heard already, better lives. One of the other things from the adoption to transformation is that for every organization around the planet is in some way on an AI journey. From the very beginning, to very advanced, but it is still a journey. So moving beyond being able to try things to where AI is an intrinsic part of your organization. I'll come back to that in a moment. And also this frame where it is not just about technology being adopted inside your organization. Every organization needs to be transformed. Using Bank Next will be an absolutely valuable tool. But your organization needs to move, and this applies to every organization on the planet, organize from what it has been in the past to what it can become in the future. And that requires a journey of transformation. And that is challenging, but it is the only path to be able to create the opportunities moving forward. Certainly. Oh. Yep.
This one's back.
Yeah.
This one's
Okay, great. So this is, we've seen this before in many parts of the world where, there's things like M-Pesa in Africa or other payment initiatives in Asia, where we're seeing this opportunity saying, well, rather than being able to catch up with other countries, I think there's an opportunity for Nepal to be able to leap ahead of others because you don't have the legacy of the old systems and be able to create entirely anew. And what you've just seen, I think, is on the edge of what is possible, the best of what we are seeing globally, to be able to, and this readiness of the youth and the energy and the sense of possibility in Nepal to be able to leap forward with these tools to change the behaviors, to be able to give more power to consumers in a better economy. So there are some key questions that leaders need to pose. If you are in financial services as a leader, you need to ask these questions, and we'll try to answer these during this evening. So one is, who owns the customer relationship? The idea is, how will you use AI to drive value creation? How do you accelerate the value to the customer? I think there's many who interpret customer value as what is the value to us, but really focusing on what is the value to the customer. We've heard the word before, ecosystem, and I think that's an absolutely fundamental one. And the ecosystem is rich and diverse, so it's really saying what role do you play within that, and what are the capabilities you need to build to win. So in this world, we'll look at a few things. We'll look at the value, where value resides in the ecosystem. Look at the strategic landscape of where people can play in that landscape. The nature of relationships and trust. The humans plus AI, this role of how humans and AI can work better together inside organizations, and the choices that leadership needs to take in this world. So coming to this idea of ecosystems, where we're thinking of an ecosystem as things like a rainforest or a coral reef, where it is all of the diversity of the many different participants coming together to create value. And this is particularly apparent in a world which is networked. So saying we are connected. So the internet is something which connects us. Our brains are networks. We're seeing industries and networks, society as a network. And in this world of networks, there is a fundamental structure to how value is created. And that's where platforms. And a platform is a structure which is where more and more where value is created. Bank Next is a platform, and many of your organizations are platforms in various guises as well. So a platform, just coming back to defining that, is enabling others to connect in order to create value. And that requires you need some governance, you need the infrastructure to be able to do that. There's many layers to the platforms that create value. So on the first levels, we have many layers of technologies, including things like crypto, things of the underlying architectures in terms of AI. We then have the roles of social networks, platforms, I guess. We are seeing the roles of the companies as platforms, including the super apps and so on. We have commerce as a platform. We have indeed payments as platforms. And that is where these become the fundamental enablers for transactions. So a critical one is trust as a platform, where things such as identity or authentication or these other ways to be able to ensure that. And that provides a vital layer. That's something where collaboration, being able to create something. Some of these are coming from governments in various guises, some of them are technological, but others can be established across the industry to be able to create that value. And finally, looking to the top of the platform, to where banks are platforms in a whole variety of ways. So it's really just looking at what layers of those platforms you participate on in order to be able to create value. So platforms go across the economy. So just across the border, we have, for example, Geo as a wonderful example of a platform which essentially started off as a mobile network, but now layering off across a whole array of different services, from individuals through merchants, through enterprise. And this provides, I suppose, an example of ways where we see these big platforms which have many participants within them, certainly both on the consumer sides, but also in terms of the value creation sides, including in the financial services. So open banking is more and more a foundation for financial services globally, where on one layer we can have open banking as agreements on protocols on payments, which we see in a number of countries. Going up to where UK, which is usually the most advanced, where we see that we have protocols, regulation, and standards which actually allow the transfer of customer data between financial institutions with the individual's permission. So for example, HSBC connected banking platform means that you can go in one app and you can access accounts across many others. So this is enabled, this can be done by regulation, and we can see on this map, the dark blue is regulatory driven and the light blue is market driven. And that's where I think that there is an extraordinary opportunity for Nepal to do a market-driven approach to the collaboration, which will enable this growth across the entire ecosystem of the ability to build a platform of financial services as a whole in which you are participants, creating more value for the economy and for all of the participants within that. So if we think about this landscape of financial services and how that's evolving, so we can think about it as two layers to that. We have the relationships on one side. We have some which are very much focused on relationships and others less so. And we also have the financial capabilities that underlie that. So some players, they focus on the relationships, but they're not actually delivering the financial capabilities behind that. And we'll give examples of this in a moment. We have also those who are creating all of the underlying financial abilities, everything from your transactions to your savings to insurance, wealth management, and so on. Some of those which are focused on the specialist niches, and those institutions that are focused on the top right in terms of being integrated across everything, providing all of the financial capabilities and owning the relationship. So there are now questions around where it is that you participate across that entire ecosystem. So, of course, there are examples of super apps, and we have them in every part of the world, where they are aggregating the customer value. So Grab in Southeast Asia is not a provider of financial services itself, but it owns the customer relationship. So that is the high relationship, and it is not delivering the financial capability itself, but it becomes part of a broader platform, which means that it is an ecosystem in which many others are participating. And I'll give a specific example of that. Another of that bottom right there is where you have the strong financial capabilities, but you're not owning the relationship. So BBVA, the Western European, South American bank, it provides banking services, but it has a whole division which is specifically around embedded finance, which means that the end customer does not see it. They are simply providing that to retailers. They are providing that to others who are simply the marketing layer on top of the bank. They are not providing the underlying utility, they are marketers. And to others who are providing that relationship and owning that relationship, indeed to airlines and so on. Another example is Bank Jago in Indonesia, which in fact works with GoTo, another super app, and together it provides the financial capabilities, working with the relationship owner, but also having part of that relationship value itself. Which takes us to relationships, and thinking a little bit more about how those are evolving in the current world. So, I love the example of surfing, where the reality is, you could teach somebody how to surf, or you can give them a book which tells them how to surf. And information does not do the job. Now, we are all in a world where we are trying to surf the waves of change. And your role, working with your customers, is not to tell them what to do. It is to be able to enable them, to give them the knowledge, the capability to surf the waves of change, to be out there making their own decisions, understanding what it is that can drive their own financial lives. So you need to be there along with them, with the waves, building their knowledge, building their capabilities, assisting them to make better decisions. So if you are simply helping them make transactions, you are a commodity. Anyone else can replace you. But if you are in a knowledge-based relationship, you are creating far more value. This is not a commodity. This is something where it is a truly powerful relationship. So this is built in this virtuous circle, and something which I've been looking at for a very long time now, where we start by thinking around, firstly, you are adding value to the customer's knowledge, to their capabilities, to their ability to make better decisions, in which we saw some wonderful examples of that earlier on, which means that they give you more of their attention. They're more open, they're more willing to share information about themselves, and what they do and how they think, which means that you can then understand how it is they think. What are their processes? What are their ways of working? What is they engage? Which means that you can then continue to refine and improve how you personalize the way in which you deliver service, the information, the ideas, and that begins to feed on itself, which means that over time, you're not remaining a commodity, you are always improving your ability to create more value for that customer and creating a form of lock-in, because they lose all of that value if they move to another institution. So now AI augments that capability to build that more and more powerful relationship, which means the potential to be that relationship owner. So one example of this is Monzo Bank in the UK. So they are a digital bank and showing some things which are actually quite similar to what we saw before, where you're able to look at your, have a personalized view of all of your accounts, finances which are, payments which are due coming up, being able to look at how you're going to be saving for particular goals in your life, what's currently required, what you need to do in order to be able to achieve your objectives of a holiday or buying a car or whatever that might be. So the app, instead of just simply I go in and transact, it becomes an active tool to help individuals achieve their financial goals. That helps not just your customer, it helps you because they become more affluent, it helps the economy, it helps the entire society to be better at being able to manage their financial situation and improve their lives. So another example of that is DBS in Singapore, where they have an app, which they also have different kiosks in shopping malls and so on, where they give you a picture. They paint a picture of what your life will be in the future in order to be able to help people in insurance and their wealth management. And it's been demonstrated, there's lots of research that shows by taking people and to give them a picture of their lives in the future and showing them that in various ways actually does help you improve what you do now in your present in how you manage your financial future. And so they are using AI to say, what small thing, what nudge will change your behavior in a positive way? And this is an extraordinary opportunity to say, how can we learn? How can we use AI to understand an individual, what they respond to provide them one signal which will help them improve their behavior in a way that will improve their life? We have more and more of the AI agents. So this is ANZ, which uses a video avatar. And so you can tell that it's human. Soon you won't be able, you can tell it's AI. Soon you probably won't be able to tell whether it's human or not. But it provides this, again, this conversational interface. Being able to understand, have this conversation with the person, be able to help them, to be able to guide them, to provide this interface which is useful to them. And so we already started to get this idea of agents, AI agents acting on the behalf of the customer. So this is in a financial services context, but now this becomes in the realm of agentic commerce. So we already have this role where I think various people have played with AI, where you can start to delegate and it starts to do tasks on your behalf under guidance, and obviously it needs a high level of supervision. But we're starting to go to where we have, in fact, the active initiation of payments with user confirmation. So Visa Intelligent Commerce is one example of this. They've created this diagram, but there's quite a few other protocols which mean that you can go into an app and say, I would like to find the best flight or the best gift for my spouse or whatever it might be. And it will provide some recommendations, and you can then choose from them, or you can say, yeah, any of those are fine, whatever you choose. And so this is requiring the user approval after it does the search and the work for you. Next stage of that is where you give it all of the parameters, and it goes and actually does the transaction. You can say, book me a flight, I just want to find the first available early flight, which costs less than a certain amount. And it actually goes and does it for you. It is approved. And the next layer beyond that is where the AI agent acts on the behalf of the end customer to be able to bring together, to be able to say, to go and actively choose where to allocate your savings in the bank which offers the best interest rate, for example, or other things which will mean that it is now actively managing on the user's behalf with guidance, with parameters, with governance. And this is the very beginning now of a world in which AI agents will act on users' behalf. And in many cases, you will start to not be dealing with customers, but AI agents that are acting on behalf of your customers. So this takes us to this world of humans plus AI. And that's my mantra, and a lot of my work today is where we're focusing on humans and AI together can do far more than either can do alone. We looked at the very beginning at the extraordinary power and capabilities of AI. And this is not a choice. This is not saying either AI or humans. It's saying humans are first. But with AI together, we can do more. And we're already seeing that as individuals. Every organization will be moved into this world of becoming an AI human organization. So I know that you already understand it, but it's always worth reviewing. That we have, of course, machine learning, which is very long established, which uses data in specific domains in order to be able to make predictions and to be able to provide insights. Generative AI, as I mentioned, just come up over the last 9 years, or in particular the last 3.5 years since ChatGPT was launched, which enable us to interact in a whole variety of conversational manners. And finally, agentic AI, which has we set it goals, and it goes and acts on our behalf. So all of these are at play inside organizations and how they work. But what we are seeing is that all work and all organizations will basically be built on humans plus AI. And this means moving from what organizations have been, which is humans plus technology, to now reconfiguring and redesigning for a new future. So there's 5 layers which we need to think about, and they're all different around how humans plus AI are applied in the organization. The first one, which I presume we are all familiar with, is we are all using AI to augment ourselves. So I've got some work to do. I'm going to think about this in new ways. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to delegate this task to AI. I'm going to get it to do a draft, whatever it might be. And so, for example, Commonwealth Bank in Australia has 40,000 people who have licenses to training to AI and the training to be able to use that well. And so that's their first foundation. The next layer is where we have teams, which include humans and AI, to be able to work together in order to be able to do that effectively. And so the bank BNI, for example, in its customer service teams, has a number of people that might work together on a resolution and have an agent as well involved in that conversation, in that teamwork. Critically is around moving to new workflows. So this is redesigning the processes for how an organization works. We're understanding where does the human sit, where does the AI sit, how does this work, and how does it grow? So then the next couple are more aspirational, but I think that they are very important. So the evolutionary enterprise, we're using all of the data, everything that happens inside the organization, to be able to grow and improve over time. Just one example of that is Capital One, which is always doing experiments, continuing to try new things, learning from them at every level. And finally, the ecosystem level, where we have intelligence which assists the whole operation of an entire ecosystem. So this leads us to thinking about how the roles of AI. And we well know that, of course, we can automate. There are things which we can automate in various ways. And we can also augment more complex tasks and thinking. But the critical part is we need to create a new architecture of how we work as organizations. So we have the automate and the augment, but the real role is re-architecting the nature of the processes of how things work inside organizations. So we think about how this works currently. So we know already that we have the number of roles that we have to play in terms of automating, increasing productivity, and augmentation. And a classic workflow is one person does thing, they pass it on to the next person, or we can have a technology, a process automation where different things happen. So there are 2 fundamental ways in which we can interact. These are the real basic ones. One is the human-AI sandwich, where you frame a task. This is what we want to achieve. This is the context. This is the broader role. Give that to a digital worker, and you come back, review, refine, and use that. And the second one is the human in the loop, where you have AI does something, human approves or refines, and passes it back to the machine. But where that goes from there is to be able to create this whole landscape of where we have a dynamic system where we're continuing to reallocate between human workers and digital workers. Within the middle, this orchestration, which can be a human manager or AI manager, often working in conjunction. So we have not something which is fixed, but now it is dynamic to use the right agents and humans together working well. So this is obviously quite a different type of organization we've had in the past, but that is what we really need to move to. And so I just want to quickly share, I'm doing a lot of work at the moment in defining the decision architectures in banking because we need to have the governance which can enable that. So at the moment, with the lowest level, we have AI with oversight. We're able to say AI performs the role, we manage the system, we have some safeguards built into that, we sample with it what the outputs are, we make sure that all of the outcomes are good. The next level is that we have the mandate, where the human defines the structure in which the decisions are made. And that passes off to the AI, but is now creating some more parameters around how that is, the AI is making decisions. Then we have this level where AI is doing the work, but AI and the humans in turn are being able to, as this is moving to more and more complex layers, where AI runs the decision pipeline, but the human is involved at multiple steps, provide some context, be able to tweak some parameters, be able to approve that at the end. More complex is where we start to have some more bigger decisions, where AI provides inputs, analysis, options for the humans to decide. And finally, more strategic issues where both humans and AI are involved in an iterative process. The human leads, but AI provides the context for that. Which leads us to this framing now the choices that you need to make. I think the bigger picture here is being able to think about what are the levels, what are the choices that you need to make? Because not every bank will be the same. There's lots of ways to position yourselves which are going to lead to different possibilities. So I want to run through what those could be. So 4 dimensions to banking strategy. First is thinking about the customer relationship and where you sit within that. Go on to look at your role in the ecosystem. What are your priorities with AI? And where do you focus on building your capabilities? So these are all leadership choices which you will need to make. And I'll provide you just a very simple analysis. These are all, of course, quite complex issues, but just be able to provide a little context on how those could work. So firstly, in the customer relationships, you can, in fact, not own the relationship, but be able to provide the capabilities. And I mentioned before BBVA and Bank Jago, Green Dot in the US. Nobody has heard of it because the only thing that it does is provide the banking platforms to retailers, to financial services organizations, to marketing organizations. Trust Bank in Singapore is an interesting case where it is Standard Chartered working with Fair Price, which is a retailer. So a retailer and a bank together being able to create a partnership where, again, this ecosystem is not just financial services, the ecosystem is the entire value creation system. And within that, being able to team up with partners that are retailers or insurers or airlines or others creates a far more broader landscape. And finally, to own the relationship. So obviously large banks classically do that. In fact, many of the challenger banks, such as Monzo that I mentioned before, they have a whole array of different possibilities for being able to interact with the customers. And interestingly, what they do is they use AI to build conversations to make it easier to be able to do that. In terms of role in the ecosystem, you can enable capabilities. So Starling Bank in the UK has established a division called Engine by Starling, which provides the fundamental enablers for other banks. Essentially, this bank is a platform you can buy. GSX Bank in Southeast Asia is a partnership between Grab and Singtel. So a super app together with a telco. Super app with a telco. So neither of them are financial services, but they have created a financial institution together. So it becomes a strategic partnership. So thinking about what are the different players that you can work together with to be able to create value. And finally, those orchestrators of the platforms. And there's a number of examples, of course, DBS being an excellent one. And before the last, looking at the capabilities around AI priorities. And there's many, many choices around how you use AI. And that is now, in fact, a distinguishing factor is the diversity of choices that AI gives you. There are many, many different organizations that you can become. And this just provides a couple of examples. Of course, you can optimize your operations, be able to be efficient, as HSBC in the UK or OCBC in Singapore have done, to be able to focus on enhancing relationships. So Kakao Bank in South Korea started off simply as a mobile app, and now what they have done is to be able to build a whole array of different financial services into there. And now 70% of the interactions are in fact through a chat interface. So instead of having a complex user interface where you go through and find the different pieces, you simply ask it and chat and interact in order to be able to find the right places. So it becomes a leading way of being able to interact. Again, echoing what we've heard earlier. And finally, around simply reinventing new business models. So RIT Bank in Malaysia is being an AI-first bank. Everything from the foundation up is built on AI and using AI to enhance the customer experience, providing whole new business models on ways in which we are interacting. And finally, there are a number of different things. You have to develop your capabilities in an organization, but there are obviously choices and trade-offs in where you focus. You can focus on trust, and I think that's a fundamental opportunity in Nepal to collaborate as an ecosystem in order to be able to build the architectures for trust. Not just building trust in yourself as an institution, but able to provide the enablers for the identity, for the authentication, for the ways of being able to understand that your customer can be trusted and they can trust you to interact with. To focus on the depth of relationship with your customer. To focus on the depth or the breadth of your services, working individually or collaborating with others. You can develop your capabilities of being able to be a participant in the platform, to the APIs and integration. Again, we've heard this, the idea around this sort of the API being fundamentally part of the Bank Next platform. To enable more efficient and more effective workflows in your organizations, combining humans plus AI to be more effective, more efficient, to create more value. And of course, you can focus on particular sectors, industries, or segments of the population, for example, in microfinance. So this all means that every organization is becoming more and more unique. And this is not a new development. More organizations used to be very similar a while ago. Now they've become more and more different, particularly with the use of AI. There are more strategic choices, and the leadership choices are absolutely critical to decide how will you be unique? What are your distinctive capabilities? How will you build on them? How will you amplify your intention with AI, with your capabilities, with the partnerships that you have as leaders? So we've looked at ecosystems, this broader strategic landscape, building relationships, the role of humans plus AI inside organizations and relationships, and some of the choices that you need to make to be able to shape your future. So I'll personally point to 5 opportunities that I see for Nepalese finance, but I'm sure that you will have far more insight, and perhaps these will just be a little beginning to help you think a little bit more around the scope of the opportunities. Clearly, you have digital banking well established in Nepalese finance. Now is the opportunity to move where the intelligence is built in. It is not just banking, it is the broader array of financial services to be able to build in AI. This idea of the knowledge-based customer relationship, the foundations that we've seen in NextBank, that ability to know more about your customer, to be able to enable them to know more about themselves, about their finance, to be able to help them to be able to make better decisions for themselves. Of course, to support financial success for Nepal's citizens, which helps everybody. And that financial enablement is such a critical enabler for that. to collaborate. All of the people in the room are together, are the leaders of the industry. And that collaboration, being able to work together to provide those layers of trust, of enablement, of collaboration, of data interchange, is an absolutely fundamental enabler of being able to build that. And to finally transform banking, moving from that adoption to transformation to enable an extraordinary future for Nepal's finance and economy. So you have to build your own vision. As I said, AI amplifies intention. You are capable of far more than ever before. So the question truly is, what is your vision? What is it you want to achieve? Because your intention can now, as never before, be absolutely achieved. So I'd like to just reflect now that you are the ones who will create the future of financial services in Nepal. And I'm absolutely delighted to be able to be here to share these ideas with you and hopefully contribute a little bit to those. But I'm very excited to be able to observe and to see what future you create for Nepal's financial industry. Thank you.